Hi, all, and welcome back to the Congressional App Challenge Debugged podcast. I'm your host, Medha, and today we have a very special episode because I'll be co hosting this episode with Tushar, a member of our Alumni Advisory Board's Debugged podcast team. And our guest today is Anais, who was born and raised in Georgia but spent most of her upbringing in South Carolina. She graduated from Columbia University last May with a BS in computer science. And she has been involved with rewriting the code since her freshman year in 2019, starting with their fellowship award and later serving as a Black Wings leader during her junior and senior years. Currently, she serves on the RTC board and as an early career leader in New York City. She also works as a software engineer with Microsoft, specifically at Xbox. Anais, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Happy to be here. Excited to impart any wisdom I may have. And I wanted to say thank you for both of y'all to have me on this podcast.
We're so excited to have you. Tushar, want to get started with the first question?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd like to first ask you if you can share what first inspired you to pursue a career in technology and eventually work at a company like Microsoft. And then additionally, if there are any experiences in high school or college that significantly influenced your path.
Yeah, so I guess I'll wrap it all in one because my first experience with computer science actually was in high school. So I took AP Computer Science my junior year, and it was completely like intimidating. I've never done anything like it before. And I think actually I was deterred from doing computer science because I felt so unprepared and out of place. And everyone in the class was really well informed, it seemed, and it took me time to like get a handle on things. So it was really hard for me to want to pursue tech because for me tech meant being a software engineer and completing computer science courses. And after that computer science experience, it was pretty rough. So I actually came in to university not with that in mind. But fortunately, I did this program my freshman year called JADE, which is Jumpstarting Aspiring Developers and Entrepreneurs. And so pretty much it was like a tech trek program, and we were able to explore various companies, like big tech companies, startups, venture capitalist firms. And what really inspired me to pursue a career in technology was that we would go to these companies and they'd host panels, and I was very excited to be a part or to see these panels. However, I saw that while all these people were very impressive, I didn't see as many people that looked like me, and that really propelled me into wanting to kind of be the change that I wanted to see. Because, as you know, tech is at the forefront of everything. It's just a part of our life every day, and so I think that everyone should be in this space because we are inherently some way or another are just in general. And so for me, it was very important to kind of see where I could find my place in this space. And that's really what inspired me to get started. And I really wanted to also be able to be on these said panels that I was talking about and inspire someone that looks like me to be like, oh, she can do it, I can do it too. And so that was really like the key motivator that kind of made me switch. And I got over that fear from high school that I wasn't doing well in that class, and built a community of people to support me at school. And so because of that community, I was exposed to opportunities and internships like Microsoft's Explore program, which was for freshmen and sophomores in university. And because of that, I kind of was able to return to Microsoft as a software engineering intern and now full-time as a software engineer. And that's kind of how I ended up here at Microsoft. I've been very grateful for the journey along the way, and I couldn't have done it without a lot of people that helped me along the way.
That's amazing. And I'm so sorry you had to go through that. It's really tough, I think, being in a place where you feel like you don't belong, but you want to be there. So it's so incredible that you're being the change that you wanted to see. Can you talk a little bit about like what are some of the projects or some of the experiences you had as an intern at Microsoft that led you to want to come back full time?
Yeah, so because I switched late, I didn't do the Explore program the summer after my freshman year. I did it after my sophomore year. So I had gained a little bit more technical expertise and was placed on the Xbox team. And I was like, oh my gosh, Xbox. This is so cool. What am I going to be doing here? And so I was on a team with two other interns, and we kind of worked in this rotational style where one of us would be the software engineer, one of us would be the PM and our project manager, and one of us would be kind of like data engineering, but also like a floater to help the other two. And we rotated every 4 weeks because it was a 12-week program. And so for that, we kind of just, I don't know if you've heard of the game Forza, Forza Horizon. It's a racing game. And we did a lot of testing. We did a lot of test coverage because we wanted to make sure that the game was testing all the cars equally, because you want to make sure that, like, if you're putting a car in a game, that it's predictably acting a certain way. Like, it shouldn't just be veering off the road or anything. So that was the first project that I was a part of. And then when I returned, I was able to kind of lean into my interest of UX and UI, because I really liked the front-end development side. And so to combine it with my previous work of doing back-end, I was sort of like a full-stack engineer where I try to build a web app from the back-end to the front-end utilizing like this, I forget what it's called, but it's called Blazor. I forget entirely what kind of tools I used from there, but this allowed me to kind of create cards, like kind of like Pokemon cards, but like employee cards. And so I was doing that for my team. And now currently I work as a software engineer. That's like my role, but I work mostly on the front end. And I work with PlayFab, which is this website that supports game developers. And I do a lot of front end work, but currently working on a lot of security because we want to make sure that Microsoft is very secure.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So I'm currently in a computer science class. I think it's the same class you were talking about, and we do a lot of back end stuff in that class. So I'm just kind of wondering if you can explain to me, like, what made you know that front end was what you wanted to pursue and what your true interests were in, as opposed to like the back end coding that you see in more typical like high school classes and everything.
I would say for me, it came from the classes I took, really. So obviously, like, when you're in university, there's a outline of classes you have to take, but then you kind of get a little taste of other classes you can choose to take. And so I took a UX UI class, and I found it really fascinating because I also was interested in psychology, and I think something that's really interesting is how do we interact with technology? And a lot of that goes into the front end because front end is what users are seeing. And so because I like that aspect of how does the customer interact with our product and being able to communicate with the customer through like our PM, that's kind of what I was able to do on my internships. Like I was able to talk to PMs and get feedback. And I realized for me that's the kind of style that I like to work with, which is that I am not one to want to kind of be on the back end of side of things because while I do enjoy coding like Python and Java and doing the back end of it, I get more joy in seeing my work like right in front of me, seeing the live changes, being able to, like I said, more so on the front end, you kind of have to get more feedback because this is what people are seeing. And so because of the classes I was able to take and the kind of electives I was able to choose, I gained more perspective on what back end looked like and what front end looked like for me, or even like somewhere in the middle, like full stack, which is like a bit of back end, a bit of front end. And I realized that while I'm still interested in back end, like I still do back end work from time to time, I still strongly prefer doing front end because I liked the kind of changes that I would see just like in the blink of an eye from committing a change and things like that.
No, I completely get that because, first of all, I know Columbia is notorious for their core curriculum of classes you're required
Yeah.
to take. But I felt like when I studied computer science in college as well, I felt like the best opportunities was when I was able to like curate the elective classes I took. So I totally agree with that. You mentioned earlier about you were grateful about the people you met along the way and how they helped shape your experiences, and you talked about community. Can you talk a little bit about what that community was like for you while at school, helping you get your role at Microsoft, as well as any mentors you might have had along the way?
Yeah, I would say it started off even a little bit prior to me starting at university, which is that I did this program called ASP, which is a program for supporting students coming into Columbia. And that kind of became the people I came to rely on for like the next 4 years and even onward. And so because of that, I already started building my little community of people that kind of had the similar interest in me, interest that I did. And so for me, that also gains like the more people you know, the more opportunities you can hear about. And so because of the community I already had, that's how I gained exposure to the program that I had mentioned earlier, like JADE, which was just completely usually for people that were just interested in tech. So it wasn't like, oh, you needed to be a CS major, because at the time I was actually a biomedical engineering major. um, but it was to gain insight. And because of that experience, which I was totally grateful for, I was able to lean on the leaders of that program. And they were sharing opportunities with us, be like, hey, there's an internship that you might be interested in. Oh, hey, like if you need help having like mock interviews, we're here for you. Oh, here's a organization that you might be interested in. And because of that program, as well as this program that I just mentioned, ASP, I actually gained a lot of insight into a lot of organizations like Rewriting the Code, because that's actually how I found out about Rewriting the Code, was through this like welcoming ceremony that we had at the beginning of our freshman year, and they talked about rewriting the code there, and that's how I applied for the fellowship. And because of that, I gained that community as well. And there was also this other community called Built by Girls, and because of that, I was able to gain like a mentor that worked in the real world per se. And it wasn't that she was a computer science software engineer. She was actually, I think she had studied mechanical engineering and was a PM, but she helped me and has continued to help me to this day in kind of navigating career life in general and advice for everything, and really has heavily impacted my trajectory on how I wanted to go about like even securing an internship role, and communicating my desires in terms of I work fully remote, but some people work in Seattle and things like that. And so that really, really played a role in a lot of the opportunities that I had, which was that I had this community that I started out with and it kind of grew. And then I had these organizations that I started to be a part of that also grew my community, as well as clubs on campus. And it kind of is just like a great big ecosystem now. So I've really loved it so far, and it just keeps growing.
That's great. Yeah. You seem to talk about how much you loved your internship at Microsoft. I know now because I've done a little bit of research because I will be going to college in the next couple of years here, and getting an internship in the tech field, especially when you're going to these big tech companies, can be very hard. So can you share some sort of advice for anyone either in high school trying to get a high school internship, or for any college students who want to get internships at these bigger companies such as Microsoft, and how they could be able to, get that same internship that you had the ability to do?
Um, I would say networking is very important. And so, say for example, like at an organization like Rewriting the Code provides so many opportunities for interview prep, networking, career tips, and so forth and so on. Like I see, I'm in the Slack, and they're always dropping opportunities for either internships in general, or internships, not internships, like workshops on how to work on your resume, or like I said, interview prep. And I think that these are really important when it comes to looking at roles, because you'd be surprised on how much you can improve on every time you take one of these opportunities to just self-develop. And even to this day, I still rely on like getting my resume checked, or having like these conversations that I have with mentors to kind of work on being a better software engineer. And so I would say networking is like, I think the key. I thought at first when I started university, I was like, okay, I gotta get A's in everything. Like that's the only way I'll ever be able to go to like any company. And but then I soon realized like, yes, grades are great, and I'm all for striving for academic excellence, but at the same time, networking will be able to propel you into spaces that you may not even have thought about because you're not in all these different spaces. And sometimes people can speak on your behalf for these opportunities, and you'd be surprised where you can end up like at the end of the day. And I would say that that's very, very important. And networking can look like joining organizations or reaching out on LinkedIn and those kind of things, to really lean on others to help you kind of get propelled into these spaces, as well as just taking the time yourself to do investigations, and like connecting with people whenever you can, because I really believe that real success looks like having a community of people to support you, and obviously at the end of the day you can support them as well when the time comes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like the best piece of advice I got was like, I was like, oh, I'm messaging all these people on LinkedIn, but like, why would they ever want to respond to me? And then someone was like, my brother said this to me. He was like, if someone messaged you on LinkedIn asking for help, wouldn't you help them? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, why would you assume that they wouldn't want to help you? And so I think it's great because it really is about like just building a community of people who want to uplift other people. And so I think I love your advice and your insight on that. You mentioned rewriting the code as a resource. I know that you're on the board. So what does that mean? What does your work involve? How did you get there?
Yeah. I'll answer the last question first on how I got there,
Mhm.
which is kind of leans into what I just said about how um, you never know when people are speaking spaces on your behalf. And fortunately, someone was speaking on my behalf. Like upon graduation, I was asked if I was interested in being on the board, which was something I was definitely interested in. And so now I'm currently kind of as a representative for early in career and recent graduates. So what that looks like for me is that I'm on these calls and I'm able to give the perspective that some of these professionals don't have because either they're now professors or they work at companies and have been there for years, maybe even decades, or kind of from coming from different perspectives. Whereas I just recently graduated, so I know I can connect similarly to the experiences that recent grads are having or early in career individuals are having, or even I can reach back into my high school days and talk about that. And so it really is a lot of me speaking on that behalf because I'm also an early career leader for the New York City area. And so I like to kind of lean into that and to say, okay, so this is how it's been going in New York City with early career women, and give you the feedback to kind of help and contribute to like the growth of rewriting the code because at the end of the day we want everyone in rewriting the code to excel, and that can only happen if we just keep working at it. And so I would say that that's been a lot of the work that I tend to do, and that it's also a lot of learning because this is the first board I've ever been on. So I also just try to gain a lot of insight from the others that are speaking on this board, and their perspectives as well, which has been very interesting because obviously, like I said, like my community usually consists of people that are in the same background or same playing field as me, like as in early career or just recent grad. So now I connected to people that are professors or have been working at companies longer term. And so it's very insightful whenever I get the experience to hear what they have to say as well on the board. I forgot if there was another question, but
No, you covered it. You covered it. But I will say, I think we're on our last question. So, Tushar, you want to take that one?
Yeah, for sure. So you talked about engaging in so many activities, and you have you're part of a lot of how do I phrase this? Can I re-say that here? Um, So you talk about engaging in a lot of activities and participating and having an internship. How do you manage all the work? I know now that you've graduated from college, it might not be as difficult, but before when you were in college and you had your internship, how were you able to manage all the work with that, with still keeping time for your personal life?
Yeah, so I would say when it came in the school year for planning the internship, which means like trying to study and get these interviews and get a role, it was a lot of time management. It was a lot of organization skills on my behalf. Like I really was leaning into Google Calendar heavily to kind of plan out my days because I really did want to perform well in these interviews. But I also realized that like for me at least, I remember in high school, one of the things that I learned a lot from teachers was that they're like, sometimes it's better to get that rest than try to study and cram for an exam because you never know, like, if you're too tired to take the exam, you may not as perform as well. And I've always taken that to heart because at the end of the day, I always got my 8 hours of sleep. And so I think that's reflected in also how I carry going into like internship season, which is that at the end of the day, I still need to be able to take care of myself because if I'm not able to perform at my best, that could be reflected in these interviews that I take. And so it was a lot of balancing that and also realizing that I'm still a human being, I'm still a young adult. I need to take a break sometimes. And so for me, it was like, okay, the weekends are for fun or like Friday, Saturday fun, like hang out with my friends. Sunday through Thursday, okay, let me study for my internships and that kind of workflow. And it was kind of hard, but it was also like I knew this was not going to be permanent and that once the internship was like secured, I would not have to be too concerned about that. And honestly, when it came to actually being a part of the internship, I think that like it was just a great experience overall because internships still allow you to have that balance to just learn about the company, enjoy being around other interns. So it's also a chance to not only obviously show and develop your skills as an intern, but to also learn more about the company and take experiences. Like we had intern day, which was like a day with a concert and we had like a fair and there's space painting, all these kind of things. And so there is a balance when it comes to personal lives when you're in an internship as well, depending on obviously the organization or company. But it's kind of really important to kind of place boundaries because at the end of the day, your health matters most. And if you're not able to have that balance, it kind of does get tiresome and can even lead to burnout, which I've experienced just from school. So I've really learned from that experience in school to not have that replicated in my like job and career life and even in the internships that I had because at the end of the day, you matter most and you can only be the best person you can be if you take care of yourself.
That's such great advice. And I definitely needed to hear that as someone who is very sleep deprived right now. Um, Definitely only got 4 hours of sleep last night, but you're inspiring me to sleep more tonight. Really appreciate your advice and taking the time. I think it was so useful to our audience. And thank you so much, Tushar, for co-hosting this episode and doing such a great job at it. We'll hope you have a great rest of your days. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for a new episode. Bye, all.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.